Have you ever wondered about the importance of feedback and how you can get it? Well, on today's podcast, we are going to talk about that. What's up, guys? This is Philip Sessions, your communication coach, here to help you with all things communication in your life and business. And I've got Arel Moodie here. He is a professional speaker in the adult development theory industry. He's a tech co-founder of Talkadot, which we're going to get into, which is really cool. He's a co-founder of Profound Mastermind and dad joke lover like myself. But Arel, before we get into who you are, I want to hear a dad joke.
All right, so you have uncorked one of my favorite weird hobbies. So here we go. What did the drummer name his twin daughters?
Stick 1 and stick 2. That's the only thing I can think of.
Anna 1, Anna 2.
Nice.
Anna 1, Anna 2.
Yeah, right, I like it.
What do you call a row of rabbits marching backwards?
I don't know.
A receding hairline.
Nice.
We got
now
we've
lost our whole audience.
Now that everyone is signed off, I got one more for the one person who's like, Phil, you usually bring really good guests, but this guy, I'm starting to question you. All right, here we go. Phil, recently I've been walking around and telling people about the benefits of dried grapes. It's all about raising awareness.
Nice. I like it. Super.
We'll end there.
Nice. I love it. So super cheesy. So obviously you love these dad jokes. You've got some amazing ones. I've definitely had people ask me, and the only thing I can think of is, I'm a little hoarse. Why is, whatever. Anyways, we'll go on because clearly my dad jokes are not as good as at delivery as yours. But tell us more about yourself now that we've heard these amazing jokes. At least for me, they're amazing.
Well, at least they are jokes. I don't know if they categorize as amazing or not. So I got interested in professional speaking when I was in college. I had a speaker come to my campus, absolutely changed my life. And I just remember thinking, I want to do this for the rest of my life. But, I thought I had to be like a 40-year-old or a 40-year veteran of the game before I could earn the right to go speak. And I started a business and I ran that business for 4 years. And then I went to see another speaker, and I was probably 22 at the time. And he said, hey, man, I told him after his talk, look out for me in 20 or 30 years. I'm going to be doing what you're doing. He said, well, why don't you just do it now? So I said, okay, great. Well, how do I do it? So he gave me pointers on how to get started in the speaking business professionally. And I did. I started speaking to high school students, college students about my journey, got into professional speaking. I've been a professional speaker full time for 17 years. It's been my passion. I've spoken at the high school market, the middle school market, the college market, and then I've gone into the corporate market, government, nonprofit. I've spoken at the White House, TEDx stage 3 times. And speaking has allowed me to do things like host TV shows. So I'm a host of a show called Family Reboot that's on Disney+, which is produced by Kelly Ripa. And I have a mastermind group. So it's a group of professionals that we bring together. We have 100 members. We cap it at 100 that are based in the upstate New York area. It's called Profound. So it's, the great thing about when you have public speaking skills and what you help people do is that literally is a skill set that you can use to make money getting paid to speak. You can use it to run a business. You can use it to get media opportunities. So it really is I like to call it a Ginzu Swiss Army knife. Normally, Swiss Army knives are really dull and not really useful, but I find what you're doing by helping people get better with the skill of speaking, it becomes something you can leverage literally in perpetuity and in so many different places. And I've been very fortunate enough to do that in a few spaces I've been very proud of.
Man, that's an incredible background. I feel like I can ask you several different questions there. But first of all, when you said upstate, I got a little excited for a second.
Yeah.
Because here where I'm at in South Carolina, we also call that the upstate. So some of your people that come down here and decide to retire because it's more affordable. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and say it. It's a lot better place to live.
I've heard nothing but good things about South Carolina. I hear the sweet tea. I don't know if sweet tea is as big in South Carolina as North Carolina. But the sweet tea and the humility of the people, the kindness of the people precede any South Carolinian I've ever met.
Yeah, man. But I got excited that you're there. But the sweet tea, that's a Southern staple. So I don't know which one would be better necessarily. But if you want the recipe that we use, basically we have how many tea bags you want. So if you get the small ones, it's like 2 tea bags. for a half a gallon or 4 for a whole gallon, and it's a cup per half gallon of sugar. So it'd be 2 cups of sugar for a gallon.
That's
And that
good.
makes it
That's aggressive.
that makes it super sweet, but that's how we
That's
do it around
aggressive.
here. We're trying to rock
Do you
teeth
gotta
out.
heat the water up first and pour in
Yeah.
the sugar so it dissolves, and then so you can heat the water then sugar, not water then, there's a little
Yeah. You boil the water, you put the tea bag in there, let it sit probably 15, 20 minutes, and then you go ahead and have the sugar in the pitcher. You dump that water in there, and then you stir it up, and then you go ahead and put more water in on top of that. And I've heard of people doing ice with it as well. All sorts of different ways of doing it. But at the end of the day, it's a 2 cup to 1 gallon ratio. 2 cup of sugar.
All right. Listen, if you want to get speaking tips and sweet tea tips, Philip Sessions is your man.
There we go. I like it. So I was excited when you said that at first, but then you said upstate New York, and it's all right. That's when I think of upstate typically. Before I moved to South Carolina, that's what I thought of as well. So I'd say y'all are the more popular for sure. But it's amazing being here in South Carolina. But I want to go back real quick. You mentioned about being on Disney Plus.
Yes.
I think that is very interesting. Not to mention the TEDx stages and all that stuff. There's a bunch of interesting stuff about you. But tell us a little bit about that, because that's definitely, I mean, they're all really unique, but
Yeah.
I haven't had anybody on the show. I've had 2 TEDx speakers, but not somebody that's been on Disney Plus. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
So I'll tell you how I got on it. And it really was never anything that I was like, I'm going to figure out how to get on TV. That, being a TV personality was never a primary objective. What happened was, and this is the honest to truth story, an executive producer was looking for talent on YouTube, literally looking for talent, not for me at all. YouTube, for whatever reason, showed my video as a suggested video, one of my speaking clips. And for whatever reason, the producer clicks on it, says, let me just give it a try, and goes, who's this guy? How come no one knows? My video probably had like 600 views, right? It's not like it's not like I'm a YouTube celebrity in any mean, right?
Yeah.
It's like very low. But he was like, I like what he's cooking, right? So he emails me, and I'll never forget it, because he's like, hey, have you ever thought about doing TV? And I thought, okay, this is where I end up in a hotel with my liver removed in a bathtub with a note saying, call the ambulance when I wake up from my unconscious state. And I was like, that's not going to happen. But turns out it was true. The quick backdrop of it is he had an idea. So I don't know if you remember, there was a guy named Montel Williams. He was a talk show host back in the day. And he was when, like Oprah and Ricky Lake and, Sarah Jessica Raphael. And there was a guy, Montel Williams. And he was African-American, bald man, positive, motivational speaker who turned talk show host. And his belief was like, hey, listen, there's no one that owns that space right now. There's no one that owns that space. I think you could own it. So we did a bunch of pitches. We shot a show that didn't get picked up, just didn't get picked up. And it was like super sad, because I was like, oh, I thought this would be a really good talk show. And it's like, okay, it wasn't my time. But because we did the pilot, someone in the universe of shows came across it and said, hey, that show didn't work, but I think he might be good for this Disney show. And then after an incredibly long time, which started with us filming, COVID happening, and then having to refilm after COVID, so it took like 2 to 3 years for something that should have took a couple of months.
Yeah.
The show came out, and it came out last year, and it was surreal. By far the hardest and most fun thing. Like, it was as equally hard as it was fun. And it was just an honor to be a part of it. And it was all just honestly a video with so if anyone's listening, even if you're not getting millions of views, opportunities still are possible. And I'm glad to be living proof of that.
And it really just getting your message out there. I talk about that all the time, of the importance of getting your message out, because it doesn't matter if you suck or whatever. If you think you have a great message, you can impact somebody. And like you just said, you never know what you putting your message out there, putting a video of yourself out will do. So that's pretty incredible. And just to ask about the toughness behind it compared to maybe a TEDx stage, where would you rank that? Would you say that which one's harder than the other?
Oh, the TV show, no question. Yeah. No question. The reason why is because what people don't realize is a 30-minute show takes 5 to 6 days of filming, 16 to 18 hours per day. It's a lot of waiting. And then now we need you to be prime. So imagine like if did you play sports? Did you ever play sports in high school?
Yeah.
What was your sport?
Distance running.
Distance running. Okay.
Yeah.
So imagine someone saying, I need you to run 5 miles. Now sit for 2 hours. Now I need you to run 20 miles. Go. And you're like, huh, when do you want me to go? And it's like, I don't know, but I need you to be ready at all. So mentally, you've got to be sharp all day. And you never know when they're going to call your name to go do your scene because they got to set it up. So there's a mental acuity, which like sounds like, oh, that's not hard. But in reality, if I said to anyone, I want you to stare at this wall for 12 hours. And the moment I call your name, I need you to be ready and like ready to go. Like it's mentally draining. And then you're shooting and then you're not like, I'm not an actor. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know where I'm supposed to look. So there's a lot of, if you actually look at the first episode, there's a lot of progress. I think I can see it. I don't know if others can see it between the first and like the third episode, because the first episode was so mentally draining because you just don't know what to expect. So that's where like preparation is so important, but there's really no way to prepare for a TV show. Like a TEDx talk, you're pretty much going to routinely prepare, and then you're going to deliver that exact same talk. Where a show, I didn't know how to prepare for it. I didn't know, like it's a lot of it is like in the moment because we're dealing with real families and real situations. So that's why I would say that was for sure tough. I'm sure someone else can have a different opinion and it's valid, but that was my lived experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to just take a side note here real quick to mention that just look at what Arel just did. I asked him a question. He could have easily just said, oh yeah, for sure, the TV show, and been done answering the question. And that would have been a valid answer, but he went and explained more of that. So for those of you trying to get better at conversation or get better at podcasting, definitely expand upon an answer. It helps a podcast flow so much, because I found more things that we could talk about in there, which one of those was actually you mentioning about how if you watch the show, you started getting better and better. And was that because you got feedback or you just thought through
Absolutely.
it? Like how? Okay. So explain how you got that feedback.
I am such a huge advocate of feedback. And in the beginning phases of almost anything, we don't want feedback because we just want people to say, you're doing good, honey. You're so good at what this is so good. Don't change nothing, right? That's what we want. That's like what we want. But then when you realize is the only way to get better at anything is through consistent feedback. I remember, as a quick aside, I remember when Kobe Bryant was alive, he would shoot free throws and he had have a guy stand behind him who would mark if he got it in or missed. If he missed, was it to the left, to the right, short or long? And he would do this for like 200-300 shots, right? So then when he was done, if he missed, he would know what percentage of shots he missed. Did he miss mostly to the right, mostly to the left? So he can prepare to tweak his shot to be that 1/10% better when, and if you hit one free throw when the game calls for it. So I remember hearing that, and that completely changed my whole philosophy on feedback. Because I'm like, if the greatest in the world, this is the level of attention to detail, I want to do the same. So with the TV show, I would constantly be asking the producers, who's your favorite host that you've ever worked with? What about them makes them your favorite host? What do you think they do differently? How do they show up on set? How do they treat the people behind the scenes? What do they do? So I'm constantly asking for what the best are doing so I can try to model it. Then saying that scene went well. What did you take from it? What did you believe? And it's very similar to speaking, by the way. One of the a kind of caveat as a sidebar into speaking here, because I know that's what we do. I like to know, and I have a whole like strategy which I'm happy to share. But like if we don't have time, I respect that. But I like to know what's the main idea that I want to share with whatever speech I'm doing. What's the main thing? And then I like to ask my audience, what did you take away from my talk? If they don't say to me what my main thing was, I know I missed the ball somewhere.
Yeah.
A lot of times people say, oh, I'm going to give them like 500 things. It's a buffet. Let them choose one. No. Like you should know what your core thesis is of your presentation, and then see, does your audience pick up what you're putting down? And if they don't, try to make some tweaks. So I think, to kind of summarize, you need to seek out feedback to get better. The more granular you can get, the more expertise you have. In the beginning, you need big feedback. You need like, how is the emotional state? When you get really, really good, it's like, how was my tone when I said this part? You get really granular. And the more granular you get, the more of an expert you become. The more expert you become, the more you can do things kind of on, autopilot.
Mm, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one thing that most people feel whenever they start speaking and communicating, that they have to have all this vocal variety. They have to put emphasis on words and the ums and the ahs and get all that stuff out. And those are like the really granular things versus working on that emotion, working on, hey, did I actually deliver a proper message that people actually understood, which is so many people just miss that. They look at all these little things and think that's what's going to make them a great speaker. No, your message is what makes you a great speaker. So get that
Yeah,
down.
so
So,
there's something a mentor told me early in my game. He said, don't major in minor things,
mm,
right? So you don't want to be like, oh, did I walk in a V? Did I use proper hand gestures if you're in the beginning of the game? No, like if
mhm.
you're in the beginning of the game, it's, was it clear? Did you know where I was going? Was I meandering? Like you have to get the big things. And once you nail those, yeah, then it's like, should I sit down when I talk? Should I take off my jacket when I talk? But if you try to do that in the beginning, it's the equivalent of putting lipstick on a pig. It's like, it makes it look a little bit better, but it's still a pig.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And then that's such an important thing for us to realize that those big things are going to be the most important. Getting that message down and being crystal clear on what that message is, because it's almost like a jack of all trades. If you talk about every single thing and just talk about what you feel like talking about, that message is not going to come across properly. But you could sound great. You could never say a single or ah the whole time, but you were not clear on your message. And if people really want to hear your message and they really are tuned in, they're going to ignore all those ums and ahs. And I always say, I give a little caveat there. If it's every other word that you're saying, that's a different story. But
Yeah.
if it's a couple sentences here and there where you're saying it, and I know both of us have done that here, and it's a little bit different when you're on a podcast versus speaking on a stage. You're going to naturally say that more. But still, we've said that, and we are professional speakers, and we teach on all of this. So it's important that you look at that big picture, like you said. But I want us to move forward and actually talk about your Talkadot here a little bit more. So I love the pun on that, Talkadot, talk a lot kind of thing there. But let's talk about what that is, and we'll start asking some more questions from that. So tell us how you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
started
of
with that and
course.
what it is.
So Talkadot is the software that I wish existed for me years ago, right? So
Mm,
here's what basically happens. You go and you give a speech, but there's a fundamental important question that we all have to ask ourselves. How do I know if I've done a good job? Well, how do I know? So people say, well, I know because people come up to me and they say, you did good. But there's people who suck and there's still courteous, nice, kind people who will come up to them and say, you did a good job. So there are some low tech ways that I've used to know if I've done a good job, right? So I'm in the professional speaking world, which is a little bit different than, say, the corporate, like speaking for my job or public speaking
mhm.
as a manager. So I always earmarked it three ways in the past. It was, do I get invited back? Do I get referred? Or do people want to, connect with me, right? Buy a book, connect with me on social media. Like, is there something that without me having to do a hard pitch that made someone say, I want more from this person, right? So those were like my three very simple things, and I can still use it to this day and it works well. But what I realized is, I can go to, let's say I've never been to South Carolina before. I can look up an Airbnb in Charleston. I can stay in a stranger's home that I've never stayed in before. Why? Well, because other people rate it. So I know there's third party, unbiased people giving their real opinion. I could jump in an Uber, which is literally a car that a stranger is driving. And why do I feel comfortable jumping in that car? Because I go, oh, this person's got a 5-star rating, 565 rides. I know they must be legit. Now, if Uber did not give me those ratings and Airbnb did not give me those ratings, I don't feel comfortable going to a stranger's home. That's stranger danger. That's bad, right? In the speaking world, we really don't have a mechanism, a tool that gives us that rating. We could do like a Google form, but in all
Mm,
reality, I could just delete the ones in the spreadsheet that I don't like, and then I can make myself feel better about myself. I could do the same thing with SurveyMonkey if I wanted to. So we
yeah.
wanted to create a way to capture data very easily. We do a very simple QR code. People give their feedback in less than 2 minutes in a very like highly designed, slick user face that automatically populates that feedback into visual data reports. What percentage of the room finds it valuable, wants to hear you speak again? Was it engaging? Was it actionable? Was it relevant? Things like that. So you can see in real time, how did I do with this one? And then if you use it over time, you can actually see trends of, are you trending up? Are you trending the same? Are you trending down? So if you try anything new, you can see if it landed or not. Because that's always another thing that we do as speakers. We try to like, I'm going to try something I've never done before. I'm going to start from the back of the room, or I'm going to, start with a poem. Well, now we can actually measure the impact of that benchmarked against past presentations to see if we trend higher with the data or lower. And we don't have to be dietitians to do it. The software does it for you. So it's really exciting because for those who really want to get better, and for anyone who's curious, like Talkadot, we have a free version of it that does everything that I just mentioned. So this is by no means like you must know, go buy something. Okay, go buy something. Like we have a premium like account just for transparency purposes that does more bells and whistles. But the basics of what we're talking about here can all be done for free. And I think anyone who wants to get better should build in a form of measurement because, as the saying goes, what gets measured gets improved.
Yeah. Oh man. So true. And we oftentimes don't measure that. And I say that we, as in speakers, especially, but really any of us, because if you really wanted to, I mean, you can use this for the speaking on stage, but this is a great tool if you're in the corporate world, if you're giving workshops, if you really even for your team, because it is anonymous. So you can give some meetings and ask your team like, hey, how was this? How did things go? And I don't know if you can tweak it some, because obviously if you're trying to do it with your team, but you want their feedback, is there a way to tweak that so that way you can get that versus the, hey, you sounded great, this was the message was on point, stuff like that?
Yeah. So yes, 100%. So normally most people are really, really bad at building surveys. Usually when they build it, they turn it into this like 75-page document that like nobody wants to fill out. So we have a very standard flow that's short and easy. But if you do want to tweak it, we just limit. So our big thing is no one wants to, I don't, you don't, nobody wants to fill out a 20-page survey, right? So it's super short to get done between, 2-3 minutes tops. So we have that framework. So you can switch out like the 1 to 5. We do a Likert scale with emojis because emojis, for whatever reason, work really well. So you can change those 1 to 5 ratings. You can get qualitative questions, but it's tight, it's clean, and it's quick, and it gets you what you need. So yes, you can tweak it, but I am just a big advocate. If anyone's like, hey, I don't like your guest because his dad joke sucked, and I'm going to go do SurveyMonkey, the only thing I will encourage you to do with whether you go to SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, I mean, ours is free, theirs is free. So like, you just must hate me if you don't want to use ours. Keep it short, keep it super short, because if you do it really long, you think you're getting more data, so it's helpful. But then there's something called survey fatigue, that the longer someone has to take, the more they actually stop caring. And when they stop caring, they actually aren't giving you true and valid feedback. They're just trying to get through it. So short really is the solution to good feedback.
Man, that's a great point. As I know, there's been surveys where I'm like, okay, I'll be nice. I understand feedback's important, and I'll go ahead and do that. And I get 3 pages in, and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not even going to try anymore. So I don't even submit it. So they just lost any of that information that I gave. Because a lot of times as well, you can't even submit it until you answer every question. It's just like I don't want to give bad or maybe not bad feedback. I mean, I guess it is bad feedback at the end of the day, but false feedback. So I'm just like, well, I'm just not going to do it. And that's one less person they give feedback. So this is a great point to keep that short. What are some things, I know you mentioned some of those questions, but what are some things that a business owner can really go and ask to be able to get that feedback so that they can go and improve on that feedback that they get?
So it really comes down to, what are you trying to measure? Like that's a really, really big thing. Now, in the world that I live in, I'm in the motivational speaking, professional speaking, paid keynote fee speaking world, right? So based on the research that we've done, there's 5 categories that people care about in that space. Is the person engaging? Was the content relevant to me? Was I inspired by it? Was it informative, and is it actionable, right? Those are the 5 things that they said, like, if I want to bring you on stage, these are the 5 things that matter. Now, you might be speaking and going, hey, look, I don't do interactive presentations. I present to my ERG, and I'm just doing a training that I have to do. Well, what is it that I want? Was it practical? Was I, informative? Was I, educational, powerful? So you want to really ask yourself, what is it that in a perfect world I can get better on? Now, what I also recommend doing in addition to data, in addition to feedback, is to ask yourself, what specific parts of your presentation do you want to get better at? There's how you open, there's how you close, there's storytelling, there's how you present information, analogies, personal references. So what I personally like to do to get better in any situation is I like to choose one thing that I care about per presentation. So is it my opening? And I'm going to try like, hey, I got 5 presentations coming up in the next month. I'm going to try 5 different openings. Does the audience lean in? Do they care? Do they like, are they scribbling on their pads or typing on their phones? Is one, they're just staring at me? Are they nodding their head? That's like a big social cue. If I'm speaking and my audience member starts nodding probably subconsciously, okay, they're in agreement with me. So I'm looking for subtle cues from my audience to get that like almost instant human feedback. So I would encourage to first, what is it that is important to you to measure? Like, what do you care about, right? And then you can turn it into a questionnaire, feedback form. And number 2, what part of your presentation do you want to try something new with? And then look at your audience and look, are they engaging with you? Are they yawning? And then again, it's also challenging. Sometimes people can yawn because they stayed up till 5 a.m. because it was, for whatever reason, they had a newborn baby or something, so you got to take certain things with a grain of salt. But ultimately, if you can get what qualities do I want to measure, what parts do I want to measure, you'll systematically get much better every single time you present.
Yeah, and that person that falls asleep, if it's just one person, I definitely would probably just ignore that. But if it's 9 out of 10 people, okay, we might need to work on getting a little bit more entertaining, getting them a little bit more engaged.
That's why data is important. 1 out of 10, not bad. 9 out of 10, that's you. That's you.
Yeah, pretty much. It doesn't matter if they're from night shift or not, because I've done some trainings where people will come in from night shift and it's rough. It's hard to keep them awake, especially when they're technical trainings, but you got to find ways to get them engaged. Ask them questions, just make a joke or whatever. Like, hey, let's go ahead and take a break real quick. There's different tactics you can go and do to be able to make that happen. So I want to make sure that we talk about Talkadot a little bit, give you that space. I know you've been awesome about not trying to pitch it or anything like that, but is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask that would be important for people to maybe take a look at? Because, I mean, it's a free account, so why not take a look at it? So there's something else that may be beneficial.
Yeah, so there's some very specific features we have. And what we'll do is in the show notes, there's going to be a link. It's going to be talk.ac/Moodie. MOODIE, not with a Y, with IE. And you can put in the code sessions. And what we do with our feedback form is we give a little thank you to people for giving feedback. So you'll see it in the show notes if you want to see how it actually works. But also give me feedback. How did I do it, Philip? Was this good? Was this helpful? Did it suck? It won't hurt my feelings. I generally want to get better, and you can see how it flows. But the way the feedback form also is set up, you have the option of giving something away at the end as a thank you. So for example, I have a video that shows, in my opinion, my best, most secret technique for how to create your message. A lot of times getting our message down is really important, but how do you actually create it? I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and distilled it to like a 9-minute video. So if anyone wants to figure out how to get their core message, it's one of my favorite things to teach people. We didn't have time to go into it today, but if you give me your feedback, as a bonus, you get access to that video training absolutely for free, just as a thank you for giving me your feedback here. So make sure to go to the show notes, give me feedback, and at the end. So one, you can give something away as a thank you for people taking your feedback if it's appropriate. If you are in the professional speaking space, this is more for people in the professional speaking space, and you want to get more speaking engagements, you want to actually book leads. There's actually a lead generation component that you can add to your feedback flow as well that asks people, do you book speakers? Do you want to book me? If you do, here's my contact. Now, what's great about the way we set up Talkadot is if someone says no, they don't book speakers, or no, they're not interested in booking you, it totally bypasses any further questions about that. So no one's ever getting hit with a bunch of questions that's not relevant to them. But like if someone's listening to this and they go, oh my gosh, I'd love to bring Arel in to do a training for my staff, and you give me feedback, it says, do you book speakers? Well, you actually do want to book me. So that's like super helpful for you. So you go, yes. Then we go, do you have an event in mind? Yes or no? Would you like to give Arel your contact info? Yes, I would. So to that person, it actually is a benefit to them because they actually want to make that connection. But the person to who it isn't, totally does branch logic and bounces off. So those are some features that are helpful depending upon what space you're in. But ultimately, it's a really, really simple tool for feedback and for getting data around something that typically is, Oh, the other thing we do, I think is pretty cool. We turn our graphs into social media shareable images for you in our tool. So you can easily go, hey, I just did a training for my group. Here's some of the feedback, and you can share your data on social, which again, if you're a manager that wants to get hired and you can start promoting how effective you are as a presenter with data, it can, help with maybe a little, I don't know. Maybe you get higher up vertically or you get horizontally somewhere else and go vertically there. I don't know, but it at least gives you options to separate yourself, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, that is, and such a powerful tool. I'm glad you brought up the social media. I was going to bring that up at the end. It was really cool that you can take that out. You don't have to just do a screenshot. It'll actually create a nice little image for you. And you can even take those testimonials as well that you get and create nice images from that also, rather than kind of like Google reviews. You've got to go take a screenshot and look, my next 5-star review that I got, and look at this nice thing, which is cool. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's nice that you do create that and you really think about the speaker and the people that are trying to get that feedback to be able to go share it as well, because that feedback is so important. And I like that y'all use the branch logic to really help make sure that people only spend the amount of time they need to at the end when they're given that feedback, which is so important to make sure that we actually do get that feedback.
That's right. So
besides using Talkadot, SurveyMonkey, these other trash platforms we won't mention anymore. But besides using these tools, let's go to the real world, because I know there's a lot of people that maybe they're not ready for that. Maybe they think like, I'd rather just ask in person, or it's a one-on-one conversation. It's kind of weird how if I was to ask you at the end of this for you to fill out the survey for me, like, can you fill out the survey so I can get some feedback? Like, I would just ask you. But how would we go about asking people for feedback, whether it's a one-on-one or one on like a small group, maybe like 10 people, where we can get that direct feedback?
Where most people go wrong with when they ask people for feedback is they're too generic with their questions. They ask things like, what did you think? And they're like, I wasn't prepared, right? So like, I listened to you. I wasn't prepared to give a synopsis on my emotional state of your So number one, if it's appropriate, and obviously you have to know the situation beforehand, you can ask them. I'm going to ask, like, I constantly want to get better. I'm constantly on a never-ending mission to get better. So at the end of this, I'm going to ask you for your thoughts. I'd love for you to jot down anything that you might have liked or anything that you may have disliked as I do this presentation. It'll really help me get better. So it's called priming. So you want to prime someone to give you feedback, because if I just grab you and go, hey, what did you think? I'm going to just go, it was good. You did great. Like, because literally my mind hasn't switched over to a critical thinking. So if I prime the audience beforehand, if it's appropriate, that's super helpful. Number two, when you do ask for feedback, ask very specific questions. For example, did you think I went on for too long, or do you think it was the right amount of time? Do you think I gave too many examples or not enough examples? Do you think that I showed too much data, or I could have shown more? You don't want to just say, what did you think? Because ultimately people will either A, not want to hurt your feelings, so tell you it's good when it really wasn't, or they won't know. It's kind of like if I said to you, hey, Philip, what's your favorite food of all time? You go, oh my, that's such a hard question. But if I said, hey, what's your favorite barbecue spot in town? You probably immediately can, like, your mind can immediately go to if you like barbecue, right?
Yeah.
You can immediately go to a place and go, oh, you got to go to Joe's Rib Shack's the best. It's the best. So if I go, what's your favorite food? It's so generic and big. It's hard. Like, it's like, well, I kind of like pizza, but I kind of like ribs, but I kind of like salad. Like, I don't know. But if I say, what's your favorite barbecue spot? You can immediately nail it. So the more specificity you can give in your question asking to what you're trying to improve on, the better. And the best way to know what you need to improve on is honestly, you got to work with someone, because, a friend of mine says, sometimes you're too close to the jar, you can't read the label, or something like that. I'm messing it up. My friend has this really great quote. So like someone like Philip, for example, could come in and teach communication skills, but also consult with you, because he can see things you can't see. He can solve problems for you in like an hour, that would take you years if you did solve by yourself. So finding someone who can see you objectively, give you feedback on how you're using your body, your messaging, your control, the flow of it. It just honestly, it beelines through you could spend 15 years to figure something out, or you can spend an hour and a half. It's like, do you want time or do you want speed? You know, and that's why I really am a big advocate of getting mentorship, getting outside objective feedback from experts, because they know how to look for things that oftentimes even audience members don't know how to put their finger on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one other thing that I thought when you were saying those different questions you could ask for feedback, and this is one that I think would be really beneficial for corporations, is to ask, hey, do you think this was the right setting for this, or would this meeting have been better to be in an email instead? I mean, you're probably not going to like the answer because you probably feel important having your meeting, but most people would rather have an email on that. And it really depends on what it is, but there are so many meetings that could have just been an email. You spent an hour to talk about 3 things essentially that you could have sent an email to update on. Why do you need an hour-long meeting with 8 to 10 different people? Talk about a time and money waster right there. But that feedback is so important. What were you going to say?
No, I was like, no, I couldn't agree more, and that's why I'm such a big advocate of someone like you putting together podcasts like this, working with people, because if you start getting a lot of feedback that says, yeah, I mean, I think an email would have been fine. Or if people go, no, we needed to talk through this, and that, there's no way I would have understood that. Little hinges swing big doors, as I think W. Clement Stone said. So, a little hinge like that could be the difference between, you know what, I'm running east trying to see a sunset. Like, I'm running in the wrong direction. I should be completely revamping my content because I keep getting this email feedback that it should be an email. So I just really resonate with what you said.
No, and you're exactly right. Plus, when you ask that question as well, it lets the people that you're leading know that, like, hey, this leader actually wants my feedback right now. And then if you start saying that and they start making those changes that leader does, that your employees are going to be more bought into you. And then they're going to realize that, like, hey, you want to know what the best thing is. And it's going to take time, but you keep asking that question, specific questions to get that feedback. And eventually your employees, the people that you're speaking to on stages, they will start giving you that feedback. And usually from the stage, they'll give you better feedback than people that are right there with you because they're afraid that maybe it's not truly anonymous or anything like that. Because feedback is an excellent source for you to get better at your speaking and communication skills for sure. But Arel, I appreciate you sharing all this information. Let's go to our final question, which I know I gave you a little warning about. And that question is, if you only had one message you could share for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
Effort is everything. At the end of the day, there's lots of things that you can't control. You can't control if you're lucky. You can't control if your family supports you. You can't control if you have smarts. Your intelligence is, IQ is somewhat of a genetic lottery. But the one thing that every single one of us has full control over is our effort. I can control how hard I work. I can control how much I try to learn. I can control, am I willing to reach out and ask for feedback, get my feelings hurt, and still keep showing up? I'm just a big advocate that effort is the one thing, maybe not the only thing by any means, but it is definitely something that is between me and no one else. And if I could just get everyone to realize, listen, it's not always about working hard. It's about, did you give your best effort? Are you doing your best? And if we had more people in general living that way, we'd have less people blaming, less people fighting each other, and more people trying to come together to find solutions.
Man, I could not agree more with that. I love that quote that you have there. And it sounds like that's something that you had to learn over time. Am I hearing that right?
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, it's very easy to say, I wish that I had such a wonderful timbre in my voice like Philip Sessions. I wish I had his beautiful hair. I don't have any hair if you listen to the podcast here, right?
We got Arel here, not Harel.
Harel. Yeah. When I had hair, I was Harel, and now I'm Arel with my baldness. But so I can absolutely get fully upset about things that I have no control over. And I did for a long time until I realized, like, at the end of the day, no one's going to save me. No, there's no Superman coming in a cape that's going to swing down and help me. So if I want to get it, I got to go after it. And I can't control a lot of things, but I can control the effort.
I love it. You're exactly right. That effort, that one small step in front of the other every single day is going to get you to where you want to go, as long as you're going in the right direction, like we talked about a minute ago. But Arel, if people want to follow you, get to see more about you, go watch that video that only had 600 views. That's probably up to 6 million at this point.
Yeah.
Where can they go find you?
Yeah, so the absolute cool thing about my name is Arel Moodie. I'm the only Arel Moodie in the whole world. Literally, there's no other Arel Moodie. So if you put Arel Moodie into YouTube, into Instagram, into Twitter, you don't even have to remember my username, which is Arel Moodie. You'll find me everywhere very, very easily. And if you generally do want to stay in touch, the easiest way is in the show notes. Give me your feedback on what you thought about this particular session. And at the end of the feedback flow, there's links to my Instagram and LinkedIn. So you can just give me your feedback, get the video, and then connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn right now is by far my favorite social media platform. It has all of the good and none of the yuck that I find with a lot of other platforms. It doesn't suck me in forever. There's good content on it, and people typically aren't yelling at each other and fighting. So right now, LinkedIn is by far my favorite social media platform. So please check me out there above anywhere else.
Love it. Well, guys, make sure that you go follow Arel, go fill out that review, and then make sure to subscribe to the podcast so we can continue to bring on amazing guests like Arel. Y'all go out there and have a healthy and blessed day.